Learning objectives for Chapter 14, Leadership and Small Group Communication. Number one, discuss the various perspectives on how and why people become leaders. Compare and contrast various leadership styles and discuss the types of power that a leader may tap into. Leadership is one of the most studied aspects of group communication. Scholars in business communication, psychology, and many other fields have written extensively about the qualities of leaders, theories of leadership, and how to build leadership skills. It's important to point out that although a group may have only one official leader, other group members play important leadership roles. Making this distinction also helps us differentiate between leaders and leadership. The leader is a group role that is associated with a high status position and may be formally or informally recognized by group leaders. Leadership is a complex of beliefs, communication patterns, and behaviors that influence the functioning of a group and move a group toward the completion of its task. A person in the role of leader may provide no or poor leadership. Likewise, a person who is not recognized as a leader in title can provide excellent leadership. In the remainder of this section, we will discuss some approaches to the study of leadership, leadership styles, and leadership and group dynamics. Heading: Why and how people become leaders. Throughout human history, some people have grown into, taken, or been given positions as leaders. Many early leaders were believed to be divine in some way. In some indigenous cultures, shamans are considered leaders because they are believed to be bridges that can connect the spiritual and physical realms. Many early kings, queens, and military leaders were said to be approved by a god to lead the people. Today, many leaders are elected or appointed to positions of power, but most of them have already accumulated much experience in leadership roles. Some leaders are well respected, some are feared, some are hated, and many elicit some combination of these reactions. This brief overview illustrates the centrality of leadership throughout the human history, but it wasn't until the last 100 years that leadership became an object of systematic study. Before we move on to specific approaches to studying leadership, let's distinguish between designated and emergent leaders. In general, some people gravitate more towards leadership than others, and some leaders are designated while others are emergent. Designated leaders are officially recognized in their leadership role and may be appointed or elected by people inside or outside the group. Designated leaders can be especially successful when they are sought out by others to fulfill and are then accepted in leadership roles. On the other hand, some people seek out leadership positions not because they possess leadership skills and have been successful leaders in the past, but because they have a drive to hold and wield power. Many groups are initially leaderless and must either designate a leader or wait for one to emerge organically. Emergent leaders gain status and respect through engagement with the group and its task and are turned to by others as a resource when leadership is needed. Emergent leaders may play an important role when a designated leader unexpectedly leaves. We will now turn our attention to three common perspectives on why some people are more likely to be designated leaders than others, and how leaders emerge in the absence of or in addition to a designated leader. Heading: Leaders emerge because of their traits. The trait approach to studying leadership distinguishes leaders from followers based on traits or personal characteristics. Some traits that leaders in general share are related to physical appearance, communication ability, intelligence, and personality. In terms of physical appearance, designated leaders tend to be taller and more attractive than other group members. This could be because we consciously or subconsciously associate a larger size, in terms of height and build, but not body fat, with strength and strength with good leadership. As far as communication abilities, leaders speak more fluently, have more confident tone, and communicate more often than other group members. Leaders are also moderately more intelligent than the other group members, which is attractive because leaders need good problem solving. Interestingly, group members are not as likely to designate or recognize an emergent leader that they perceive to be exceedingly more intelligent than them. Last, leaders are usually more extroverted, assertive, and persistent than other group members. These personality traits help get these group members noticed by others, and expressivity is often seen as attractive and as a sign of communication competence. The trait approach to studying leaders has provided some useful information regarding how people view ideal leaders, but it has not provided much insight into why some people become and are more successful leaders than others. The list of ideal traits is not final because excellent leaders can have few, if any, of these traits, and poor leaders can possess many. Additionally, these traits are difficult to change or control without much time and effort. Because these traits are enduring, there isn't much room for people to learn and develop leadership skills, which makes this approach less desirable for communication scholars who view leadership as a communication competence. Rather than viewing these traits as a guide for what to look for when choosing your next leader, view them as traits that are made meaningful through context and communication behaviors. Heading: Leaders emerge because of the situation. The emergent approach to studying leadership considers how leaders emerge in groups that are initially leaderless and how situational contexts affect this process. The situational context that surrounds a group influences what type of leader is best. Situations may be highly structured, highly unstructured, or anywhere in between. Research has found that leaders with a high task orientation are likely to emerge in both highly structured contexts, like a work group, to maintain a completely automated factory unit, and highly unstructured contexts, like a group that is responding to a crisis. Relational oriented leaders are more likely to emerge in semi structured contexts that are less formal, and in groups composed of people who have specific knowledge and are therefore be trusted to do much of their work independently. For example, a group of local business owners who form a group for professional networking would likely prefer a leader with a relational oriented style, since these group members are already likely leaders in their own right, and therefore might resent a person who takes a rigid task oriented style over a more collegial style. Leaders emerge differently in different groups, but there are two stages common to each scenario. The first stage only covers a brief period, perhaps no longer than a portion of one meeting. During this first stage, about half of the group's members are eliminated from the possibility of being the group's leader. Remember that this is an informal and implicit process, not like people being picked for a kickball team or intentionally vetted. But there are some communicative behaviors that influence who makes the cut to the next stage of informal leader consideration. People will likely be eliminated as leader candidates if they do not actively contribute to initial group interactions. If they contribute but communicate poorly, if they contribute but appear too rigid or inflexible in their beliefs, or if they seem uninformed about the task of the group. The second stage of leader emergence is where a more or less pronounced struggle for leadership begins. In one scenario, a leader candidate picks up an ally in the group who acts as a supporter or lieutenant, reinforcing the ideas and contributions of the candidate. If there are no other leader candidates or the others fail to pick up a supporter, the candidate with the supporter will likely become the leader. In a second scenario, there are two leader candidates who both pick up supporters and who are both qualified leaders. This leads to a more intense and potentially prolonged struggle that can actually be uncomfortable for other group members. Although two leader candidates don't overtly fight with each other or say, I should be a leader, not you, they both take strong stances in regards to the group's purpose and try to influence the structure, procedures, and trajectory for the group. Group members not involved in the struggle may not know who to listen to, which can lead to a low task and social cohesion and may cause a group to fail. In some cases, one candidate supporter team will retreat, leaving a clear leader to step up. But the candidate who retreated will still enjoy a relatively high status in the group and be respected for vying for leadership. The second place candidate may become a nuisance for the new emergent leader, questioning his or her decisions. Rather than excluding or punishing the second place candidate, the new leader should give him or her responsibilities within the group to make use of the group member's respected status. Heading: Leaders emerge based on communication skill and competence. The final approach to the study of leadership is considered a functional approach because it focuses on how particular communication beliefs function to create the conditions of leadership. This last approach is the most useful for communication scholars and for people who want to improve their leadership skills, because leadership behaviors, which are learnable and adaptable rather than traits or situations, which are often beyond our control, are the primary focus of study. As we've already learned, any group member can exhibit leadership behaviors, not just a designated or emergent leader. Therefore, leadership behaviors are important for all of us to understand, even if we don't anticipate serving in leadership positions. The communication behaviors that facilitate effective leadership encompass three main areas of group communication, including task, procedural, and relational functions. Although any group member can perform leadership behaviors, groups usually have patterns of and expectations for behaviors once they get to the norming and performing stages of group development. Many groups only meet one or two times, and in these cases, it is likely that a designated leader will perform many of the functions to get the group started and then step in to facilitate as needed. Leadership behaviors that contribute to a group's task related functions include providing, seeking, and evaluating information. Leaders may want to be cautious about contributing ideas before soliciting ideas from group members, since the leader's contribution may sway or influence others in the group, therefore diminishing the importance of varying perspectives. Likewise, a leader may want to solicit evaluation of ideas from members before providing his or her own judgment. In group situations where creativity is needed to generate ideas or solutions to a problem, the task leader may be wise to facilitate brainstorming and discussion. This can allow the leader to keep his or her eye on the big picture and challenge group members to make their ideas more concrete or discuss their implications beyond the group without adding his or her own opinion. To review, some of the key leadership behaviors that contribute to the task related functions of a group include the following: contributing ideas, seeking ideas, evaluating ideas, seeking idea evaluation, visualizing abstract ideas, generalizing from specific ideas. Leadership behaviors that contribute to a group's procedural related functions help guide the group as it proceeds from idea generation to implementation. Some leaders are better at facilitating and managing ideas than they are at managing the administrative functions of a group. So while a group leader may help establish the goals of the group and set the agenda, another group member with more experience in group operations may step in to periodically revisit and assess progress toward completion of goals and compare the group's performance against its agenda. It's also important to check in between idea generating sessions to clarify, summarize, and gauge the agreement level of group members. A very skilled and experienced leader may take primary responsibility for all these behaviors, but it's often beneficial to share them with group members to avoid being overburdened. To review, some of the key leadership behaviors that contribute to the procedural functions of a group include the following: goal setting, agenda making, clarifying, summarizing, verbalizing consensus, generalizing from specific ideas. Leadership behaviors that contribute to a group's relational functions include creating a participative and inclusive climate, establishing norms of reflection and self analysis, and managing conflict. By encouraging participation among group members, a leader can help quell people who try to monopolize discussion and create an overall climate of openness and equality. Leaders want to make sure that people don't feel personally judged for their ideas, and that criticism remains idea centered, not person centered. A safe and positive climate typically leads to higher quality idea generation and decision making. Leaders also encourage group members to meta-communicate or talk about the group's communication. This can help the group identify and begin to address any interpersonal or communication issues before they escalate and divert the group away from accomplishing its goal. A group with a well established participative and inclusive climate will be better prepared to handle conflict when it emerges. Remember that conflict, when handled competently, can enhance group performance. Leaders may even instigate productive conflict by playing devil's advocate or facilitating civil debate of ideas. To review, some of the key leadership behaviors that contribute to the relational functions of a group include the following: regulating participation, climate making, instigating group self analysis, resolving conflict, instigating productive conflict. Heading: Leadership styles. Given the large amount of research done on leadership, it is not surprising that there are several different ways to define or categorize leadership styles. In general, effective leaders do not sit solely into one style or any of the following classifications. Instead, they are able to adapt their leadership style to fit the relational and situational context. One common way to study leadership style is to make a distinction among autocratic, democratic, and laissez-faire leaders. These leadership styles can be described as follows. Autocratic leaders set policies and make decisions primarily on their own, taking advantage of the power present in their title or status to set the agenda for the group. Democratic leaders facilitate group discussion and like to take input from all members before making a decision. Laissez-faire leaders take a hands-off approach, preferring to give group members freedom to reach and implement their own decisions. While this is a frequently cited model of leadership styles, we will focus in more detail on a model that was first developed a few years after this one. I choose to focus on this later model because it offers some more specifics in terms of the communicative elements of each leadership style. The four leadership styles used in this model are directive, participative, supportive, and achievement-oriented. Heading: Directive leaders. Directive leaders help provide psychological structure for their group members by clearly communicating expectations, keeping a schedule and agenda, providing specific guidance as group members work toward the completion of a task, and taking the lead on setting and communicating group rules and procedures. Although this is most similar to the autocratic leadership style mentioned before, it is more nuanced and flexible. The originators of this model note that a leader can be directive without being seen as authoritarian. To do this, directive leaders must be good motivators who encourage productivity through positive reinforcement or reward rather than through the threat of punishment. A directive leadership style is effective in groups that do not have a history and may require direction to get started on their task. It can also be the most appropriate method during crisis situations in which decisions must be made under time constraints or other extraordinary pressures. When groups have an established history and are composed of people with unique skills and expertise, a directive approach may be seen as micromanaging. In these groups, a more participative style may be the best option. Heading: Participative leaders. Participative leaders work to include group members in the decision-making process by soliciting and considering their opinions and suggestions. When group members feel included, their personal goals are more likely to align with the group and organization's goals, which can help productivity. This style of leadership can also aid in group member socialization, as the members feel like they get to establish group norms and rules, which affects cohesion and climate. When group members participate more, they buy into the group's norms and goals, which can increase conformity pressures for incoming group members. As we learned earlier, this is a good place to start and a good point, but it can become negative when the pressures lead to unethical group member behaviorship. In addition to consulting group members for help with decision making, participative leaders also grant group members more freedom to work independently. This can lead group members to feel trusted and respected for their skills, which can increase their effort and output. The participative method of leadership is similar to the democratic style discussed earlier, and it is a style of leadership practiced in many organizations that have established work groups that meet consistently over long periods of time. U.S. companies began to adopt a more participative and less directive style of management in the 1980s after organizational scholars researched teamwork and efficiency in Japanese corporations. Japanese managers included employees in decision making, which blurred the line between the leader and other group members and enhanced productivity. These small groups were called quality circles because they focused on group interaction intended to improve quality and productivity. Heading: Supportive leaders. Supportive leaders show concern for their followers' needs and emotions. They want to support group members' welfare through a positive and friendly group climate. These leaders are good at reducing the stress and frustration of the group, which helps create a positive climate and can help increase group members' positive feelings about the task and other group members. As we will learn later, some group roles function to maintain the relational climate of the group, and several group members often perform these role behaviors. With a supportive leader as a model, such behaviors would likely be performed as part of established group norms, which can do much to enhance social cohesion. Supportive leaders do not provide unconditionally positive praise. They also competitively provide constructive criticism in order to challenge and enhance group members' contributions. A supportive leadership style is more likely in groups that are primarily relational rather than task-oriented. For example, support groups and therapy groups benefit from a supportive leader. While maintaining positive relationships is an important part of any group's functioning, most task-oriented groups need to spend more time on task than social functions in order to efficiently work toward the completion of their task. Skilled directive or participative leaders of task-oriented groups would be wise to employ supportive leadership behaviors when group members experience emotional stress to prevent relational stress from negatively impacting the group's climate and cohesion. Heading: Achievement-oriented leaders. Achievement-oriented leaders strive for excellence and set challenging goals, constantly seeking improvement and exhibiting confidence that group members can meet their high expectations. These leaders often engage in systematic social comparison, keeping tabs on other similar high-performing groups to assess their expectations and the group's progress. This type of leadership is similar to what other scholars call transformational or visionary leadership, and is often associated with leaders like former Apple CEO Steve Jobs, talk show host and television network CEO Oprah Winfrey, former President Bill Clinton, and business magnate turned philanthropist Warren Buffett. Achievement-oriented leaders are likely less common than the other styles, as this style requires a high level of skill and commitment on the part of the leader of the group. Although rare, these leaders can be found at all levels of groups ranging from local school boards to Fortune 500 companies. Certain group dynamics must be in place in order to accommodate this leadership style. Groups for which an achievement-oriented leadership style would be effective are typically intentionally created and are made up of members who are skilled and competent in regards to the group's task. In many cases, the leader is specifically chosen because of his or her reputation and expertise. And even though the group members may not have a history of working with the leader, the members and leader must have a high degree of mutual respect. Heading: Leadership and Power. Leaders help move group members toward the completion of their goal using various motivational strategies. The types of power leaders draw on to motivate have long been a topic of small group study. A leader may possess or draw on any one of the following 5 types of power to varying degrees. We call them legitimate, expert, referent, information, and reward coercive. Effective leaders do not need to possess all 5 types of power. Instead, competent leaders know how to draw on the other group members who may be better able to exercise a type of power in a given situation. Heading: Legitimate power. The very title of leader brings with it legitimate power, which is power that flows from the officially recognized position, status, or title of a group member. For example, the leader of the social media relations department of a retail chain receives legitimate power through the title Director of Social Media Relations. It is important to note though, that being designated as someone with status or a position of power doesn't mean that the group members respect or recognize that power. Even with a title, leaders must still learn the ability to provide leadership. Of the 5 types of power, however, the leader alone is most likely to possess legitimate power. Heading: Expert power. Expert power comes from knowledge, skill, or expertise that a group member possesses and that other group members do not. For example, even though all the workers in the social media relations department have experience with computers, the information technology IT officer has expert power when it comes to computer networking and programming. Because of this, even though the director may have a higher status, she or he must defer to the IT officer when the office network crashes. A leader who has legitimate and expert power may be able to take a central role in setting the group's direction, contributing to problem solving, and helping the group achieve its goal. In groups with a designated leader who relies primarily on legitimate power, a member with a significant amount of expert power may emerge as an unofficial secondary leader. Heading: Referent power. Referent power comes from the attractiveness, likability, and charisma of the group member. As we learned earlier, more physically attractive people and more outgoing people are often chosen as leaders. This could be due to their referent power. Referent power also derives from a person's reputation. A group member may have referent power if he or she is well respected outside of the group for previous accomplishments, or even because he or she is known as a dependable and capable group member. Like legitimate power, the fact that a person possesses referent power doesn't mean he or she has the talent, skill, or other characteristic needed to actually lead the group. A person could just be likable, but have no relevant knowledge about the group's task or leadership experience. Some groups actually desire this type of leader, especially if the person is meant to attract external attention and serve as more of a figurehead than a regularly functioning group member. For example, a group formed to raise funds for a science and nature museum may choose a former mayor, local celebrity, or NASA astronaut as their leader because of his or her referent power. In this situation, it would probably be best for the group to have a secondary leader who attends to task and problem solving functions within the group. Heading: Information power. Information power comes from a person's ability to access information that comes through informal channels and well-established social and professional networks. We have already learned that information networks are an important part of a group structure and can affect a group's access to various resources. When a group member is said to have know-how, they possess information power. The knowledge may not always be official, but it helps the groups to solve problems and get things done. Individuals develop information power through years of interacting with others, making connections, and building and maintaining interpersonal and instrumental relationships. For example, the group formed to raise funds for the Science and Nature Museum may need to draw on informal information networks to get leads on potential donors, to get information about what local science teachers would recommend for exhibits, or to book a band willing to perform for free at a fundraising concert. Heading: Reward and coercive power. The final 2 types of power, reward and coercive, are related. Reward power comes from the ability of a group member to provide a positive incentive as a compliance gaining strategy, and coercive power comes from the ability of a group member to provide a negative incentive. These 2 types of power can be difficult for leaders and other group members to manage because their use can lead to interpersonal conflict. Reward power can be used by nearly any group member if he or she gives another group member positive feedback on an idea, an appreciation card for hard work, or a pat on the back. Because of limited resources, many leaders are frustrated by their inability to give worthwhile, tangible rewards to group members, such as prizes, bonuses, or raises. Additionally, the use of reward power may seem corny or paternalistic to some, or may arouse accusations of favoritism or jealousy among group members who don't receive the award. Coercive power, since it entails punishment or negative incentive, can lead to interpersonal conflict and a negative group climate if it is overused or used improperly. While any leader or group member could make threats to others, leaders with legitimate power are typically in the best position to use coercive power. In such cases, coercive power may manifest in loss of pay and or privileges, being excluded from the group, or being fired if the group work is job related. In many volunteer groups or groups that lack formal rules and procedures, leaders have more of a difficult time using coercive power since they can't issue official punishments. Coercive power will likely take the form of interpersonal punishments such as ignoring group members or excluding them from group activities.